said, my name's Dan. I work on the Ask programme. That stands for Apprenticeship Support and Knowledge. So I talk about apprenticeships quite a lot. I would usually introduce what I'm going to be doing, but that's just been done fabulously. So I'm going to just dive straight in. A little information on apprenticeships. What are they? They are one of the options out there. So it's a combination of working and education at the same point. So generally speaking, you're looking at about 80% of the time at work. You're learning how to do that job by doing that job. You're hands-on, you're on-site, you're surrounded by people that are qualified in that job role already. 20% of the time, you are studying towards a qualification that matches up to that job. So it is a minimum of 20% of the time. Some employers may shuffle that up a little bit, so your duration on that course doesn't take as long, but most will run it as an 80-20 split. It's a full-time job, you get a contract, you get paid. Salaries start from, as of this April, your baseline will be £7.55 per hour. Saying that, the ones that we are mainly talking about, your higher and degree levels, you're looking at about £18,000 to £20,000 starting salary. I'll touch a little bit more on that when I talk about the levels on the next slide. So your baseline can be a little bit lower, but you can earn more. Some companies do pay higher. It is a real job. There are real responsibilities attached to that. So you are at work. Getting that job can be a process. They can be competitive. Keeping that job, as long as you are applying yourself as you should be at work, you should be absolutely fine. Employers do expect you to make mistakes. They expect you to learn from those mistakes. So as long as you're applying yourself, you're attending, you're working hard, you should be doing okay. The responsibilities will differ from job role to job role. So there are over 700 different standards. That's a wide range of choice of different pathways that you can get into. Job roles in paramedics, your responsibilities are going to be very different to if you're going to aerospace engineering. It is specific to that job, but all of that should be highlighted in your contract. So you do get a full-time working contract, really similar to what I'm on. Covers a little bit about you, what that job role is, what's expected of you, how much you get paid, what the duration is, as you would expect a full-term contract too. How your apprenticeship contract can differ slightly is it can go into next steps. So at the end of your course, you've passed, you've got a certain grade, have you got a job, or do you still need to interview for that job? Some companies will say that you've gone through the whole process, you've got that job role, you've passed everything, you love working for them, they want you there, but you're not allowed to look elsewhere. So they'll contract you in for your apprenticeship time and then 1 year on top. So they've given you all that training, they've given you that on-site experience. When you are fully qualified, they want you for another year to work that job role fully qualified before you've got the option of looking at. So do read your contract, as you would hopefully with any job role. Read your contract through, if you haven't seen one before, with someone that has. So parents, carers, older siblings, if it's taking it on site, if you've got an offer nice and early, then the support team at King Ed's will happily have a look through, I am sure. Job roles, so standards. So apprenticeships aren't split into different job titles, they're split into standards because there is that education. So there are over 700 standards. So you may find really similar job roles that offer at equivalent of A levels or a degree level. So you can do similar jobs at different levels, but there's a wide range of choice. Any sort of job role that you can think of, any type of sector that you can think of work-wise, you can find an apprenticeship in. That's not saying you can do every job, but there is a wide range of choice. So your engineering is the largest sector, your business, legal, finance, healthcare, childcare, business, so much more out there. The last point on here, which I'm sure Abdullah will shed a little bit more light onto, it's not necessarily the easy option. So it is a job role, there is a process to getting it. If anyone is in their final year now, if you are considering apprenticeships, hopefully you're already very active with looking and getting those applications in. It can start really early. So some big companies will advertise their jobs September, October this year, looking for those people starting year 13, so that your final year at college, to start next year in August, September time. So it can be a really early process. The companies that do start like that do so you can focus on your studies basically. So you get your application in October, you interview in November, you've gone through all the online assessments that they can offer, or any different assessments they could offer you. And they say, yes, get the grades you've told me you're going to get, and you start August, September time. So you're not applying for work while you are trying to study to pass your exams at the same point, which some get you out nice and early, others will be later on in the year. So your levels of apprenticeships, they run across the board. If we are already in year 12, year 13, we're probably not looking at a level 2 unless it is something really niche to your pathway. So level 2, you come out with a qualification equivalent of 5 grade 5s if you pass. I'm going to keep that one quite simple because it's probably not where most of us are looking. The majority of you on this call right now will be doing a level 3 bracket of education, whether that's A levels, whether it's combinations of different courses. You're on your level 3 already. So level 3 is available for anyone 16 and above. It's usually a 2-year course, and providing you pass, you come out with a qualification equivalent of 5 of A levels. It could be worth looking now. So we will focus mainly on higher degree on here, but if you're not 100% sure on the pathway that you want to go, don't be blinkered by the fact that the degree levels look really good, that you get the extra money, that they do fund you throughout. If it's the right step for you to get a grounding in that company first and take on a level 3 to figure out what direction you want to go into, you're already representing that country and you're showing them why they should take you on afterwards. So it is an option, even though academically it's a sidestep. Those that are academically ahead of where you are now are your 4s through 7s. So end of this year or next year, depending on if you're in year 12 or 13, you come out with your A-level results or your equivalent, you're really happy, you've got great grades across the board, you can go on to higher degrees. So 4s and 5s usually last between 2 and 4 years. Academically, it is higher than A-levels, not as high as a degree. So some people bracket it as year 1, year 2 of university, or say it's a foundation degree. It could be lots of different qualifications. Your old school HNC, HND, there's qualifications specific to different job roles, but they all fall in that bracket of higher than A-levels, not quite as high as a degree, that middle ground. Level 6 is your degree. Same qualification you get from university, your BSc, your BA, your BEng, or any other qualification. It is a degree. It's not an equivalent. You get the same qualification, you go through the same process, you're working 2 degree levels. Could be at a university, it could be at an independent study area, but you are studying towards a degree. Your level 7 is either a degree and a specialism in that job role, or your master's qualification. So that 20% equates to what you're studying towards, and depending on what level you are, is what you're studying towards. But there is a wide range of choice out there. Now, the degree ones, I have said don't get purely blinkered by them, but they do tend to be the most appealing for people sitting in your position. So it is the same setup as all of the others. You've got that 80-20 split. 80% of the time you go to work. Minimum of 20% of the time studying towards that qualification. Some of the bonuses from it are there's no debt. So your tuition fees are paid. For your standard 3-year course, you're looking at up of £27,000 covered by someone else. It still exists, but somebody else pays it for you. On average, you're getting about £20,000 per year. Some pay higher, some pay less. Anything sort of 80 to 20 starting salary is fairly competitive. You're studying towards that degree, you're getting that work experience with a company that are interested in you working there full-time afterwards. They wouldn't have offered you the apprenticeship if they weren't. So they are looking at training you up to be the perfect employee for them. You're gaining that work experience. There's over 100 universities linked in with your higher degree levels. So there's a wide range of choice. It isn't always a university. So most of the time you find that employer, you apply for that job role directly through that employer, and they already have their education provider attached. So it could be a bit brick built university like it is that you go to university. It could be someone that specializes in those sort of qualifications. So if you wanted to be a solicitor, it'll be a company that specializes in law, and so on. Sometimes it is the employer themselves. So if you wanted to join any of the branches in the military, they do their own training in-house. So most of the time you go to work, you go and do what that job role is. Part of it is going to a classroom to get your study time, but it would all be on site. If it is a brick-built university, you get all the perks of what you would if you were at university. So you, providing you pass, you get a graduation, you've got access to the libraries, the gyms, the unions, you can go on trials to get onto the sports teams. It's all accessible. With things like sports teams, more than likely at universities, they play on a Wednesday afternoon. More than likely, you're going to be at work at that point. Work does come first. So it is something to consider. Are a range of different apprenticeships out there. So there are over 700. There's a lot more than just the ones on the screen. Some of these come out a lot more than others. So your chef, your business administrator, there's absolutely loads of them out there. Aerospace is quite a big area. You get a fair few quantity surveyors. Zookeepers, not so many. There's not many zoos in the country, and they actively have to be recruiting for you to be able to apply when you are looking for those job roles. So sometimes finding that job role in the first place, it can be a little bit of a struggle. But if it's the right fit for you, if you're ready to get hands-on out of the classroom, carry on your learning, gain those qualifications, it can be very productive. So are there any jobs out there at the moment? So I've been onto a website called findanapprenticeship.gov. It's run by the government. It's trusted by employers. It's really simple to use. It's a big job shop just for apprenticeships. I put the postcode in for King Ed's, and within 5 miles, as of last week when I made these slides up, there were 25 vacancies. Within 20 miles, almost 500. The bottom number, 7,000-ish at the moment. By the time we hit Easter, I suspect that to be about 12, 13,000. That's the same pattern as what happened last year and the year before and the year before. So they tend to peak around your Easter time and then stay fairly high until kind of August time, where they drop off quite significantly. Employers don't have to advertise around the school year, the academic year, but quite often they do, because that's where most people that recruit that aren't already working for that company start from. So are there any jobs in the area? I've picked out a few higher degree levels that aren't a million miles away from where you're based academically at the moment. So you've got your sales executive, £18,000, pretty standard. Your air operations and control officer pays well above what I would expect. It is a military job role, and they do quite often pay slightly higher. Your next one, environmental and flood risk management, and your solicitor. Apart from that RAF job role, everything else on here is kind of where I'd expect the pay structures to be a starting off job role as an apprenticeship. Some are slightly higher than the average, some slightly lower, but ballpoint figures are there or thereabouts. So that's all from findanapprenticeship.gov. It's really simple to use. It'll ask you 2 questions, what and where. Put your postcode in. You can set how far you want to search. If you have no idea on what you want to do, leave what blank, hit search, and it'll give you everything within 10 miles. You can change that filter later on. If you do know what you want to do, play around with the words a little bit. So if you wanted to be a builder, then try builder, bricklayer, construction, trade, and you'll get different matches for all of them. So it is worth playing around a little bit with what you're typing into the what box, but you'll quickly figure out which are the buzzwords that give you matches, so kind of give you those jobs that are out there. So other places to look, on site at King Ed's, there will be careers information, whether it's a virtual board or a physical board. There will be careers there. Companies' websites, some companies will only advertise on their own website. So knowing who they are when they recruit is a big step to finding them at the right point to get your applications on time. Any careers websites, if you can think of getting a part-time job, a full-time job off a careers website, just type the word apprenticeship in. If you don't find anything, they don't do them. If you find loads of things, then filter it out a little bit more. Put what job you want, put where you're located, all of that really key information that's important to you, you can fill out at that point. most of them offer apprenticeships. Social media. So social platforms are a great platform for finding work as well. LinkedIn especially is really, really useful, but a lot of the people going into their first time career pathway, if it is an apprenticeship, are leaving school at 16, leaving school at 18, leaving university at 21. So young people, employers advertise on platforms that you are likely to use. That isn't saying spend all your time on TikTok looking for apprenticeships. There are more useful places to be looking, but don't be surprised if adverts do filter through to there. Friends and family, if you know someone doing that job that you want to do, have a chat to them. Everyone is really happy to talk about their jobs, generally speaking, but they're very unlikely to come up to you and say, have you ever thought about a job role as a whatever it is that you're thinking of doing? So it's kind of down to you to start that conversation. You kick things off, you get that ball rolling, and they will take the lead from there. Their highs, their lows, how they got qualified, what you can do to stand out. They could get you work experience if you happen to be in the right place, having the right conversation with the right person. One area that a lot of people don't like talking about is finance. It tends to be very personal to people. So if you want to know what you get paid, think about how you phrase that question. Don't outright ask, what do you get paid? But what could I get paid if I was starting out in this sector? You may find that you get slightly more useful answers rather than someone just laughing at you saying, I'm not going to tell you, because what they get paid is personal to them. Now, I do have a little map line on that kind of shows a journey into an apprenticeship. So the circles have only come down because I've pulled this out of a different slide and it's all about registering up. But search for that apprenticeship. You're not going to find that job unless you're actively looking for it. You'd have to be really, really lucky. Register, so set up an account on findandapprenticeship.gov or wherever you're going to be looking for those job roles. But findandapprenticeship.gov is a great starting point. Apply. Again, you're not going to get those jobs unless you're applying for it. So your application forms come in lots of different formats. It could be CVs, it could be online format, but they all tend to have similar types of questions. What are your strengths? Why do you want the job? Why do you want to work for my company? Those types of questions. That goes well, you get shortlisted, you get an email saying what that company is going to do next. It could be your online aptitude tests. It could be a pre-recorded interview. It could be going into an assessment center face-to-face with other people, or it could be going straight to your final interview. A lot of employers do like to put aptitude tests and assessment centers in, so figure out what you're good at. From your aptitude tests, you tell if you're good at numerical reasoning or whatever type of test you're doing. From your face-to-face assessments, you can figure out what a person's like, how they involve other people. Do they communicate well? Are they a good listener? What are they like at problem solving? They will set you different tasks to find out what your skills are, what your strengths are. And if it is an assessment center or an interview, you get to meet the people that you're going to be working for. You get to have a look around the offices that you're based in or see parts of it at least. So you get a little view of what it's like on site. All of that goes well, you're offered the apprenticeship. Now, depending on when the employer is recruiting, it could be that you're applying in September. It could be that you're applying later on through your academic year. So a lot of employers do target their job roles around the academic year, but there's no one day to apply by. Apply at the same time as university. You've got your 5 UCAS places, as many degree level apprenticeships on top of that. And I do have any questions, but I think we're going to be coming to those at the end. Apologies if I've overlapped with what Abdullah was going to say, but I'm going to pass over to him now.
Thank you so much, Dan. That's absolutely brilliant. It's really good to hear all the background, all of the information that everybody online needs to know in advance of gaining an apprenticeship. But now we're going to actually hear from Abdullah, who is, as we said earlier, one of our alumni at King Ed's, who left last year, and his journey has been really interesting. So thank you, Abdullah. We look forward to hearing from you, and I'll come back online again afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you both, Luis and Dan. I think, Dan, your description of how both kind of a degree apprenticeship or an apprenticeship in general is, and also the application process, was pretty spot on, to be completely honest. Yeah, so thank you for that. One sec, I'm just gonna share my screen if it will let me. Apologies. It's not willing to work. Hopefully this should work.
That's just coming up. Thank you, Abdullah. Yes,
No
that's
worries.
great. Thank
Oh, yes, brilliant. All right. So, just firstly to kind of introduce myself, I am Abdullah Shamit. I was studying here this time last year, so I feel for a lot of you year 13s, both, kind of applying for degree apprenticeships, for uni. I applied for uni. Um, and yeah, so I'll get started. I now work for Ofwat as a economics degree apprentice. I just kind of want to walk through what life like is as a degree apprentice, how to apply, and also why you should choose Ofwat, basically. So I'll get started. So basically, Ofwat is it's a regulatory body. It's in charge of both the protection and provision of the water industry in both England and Wales. So oversees 11 water and wastewater companies and a further 5 water-only companies. I don't want to get too much bogged down to the economics of it because I presume not everyone here studies economics or really cares about economics. But to give you a very brief overview, essentially these are just very big kind of natural monopolies, and they need to be that way because of the kind of nature of the water sector. And Ofwat kind of steps in to make sure that the consumers are not put at risks, they're not being exploited, and also to ensure the protection of both the environment and infrastructure. If there's any question about Ofwat, please do feel free to ask me. So to get started, why should you choose a degree apprenticeship at Ofwat? I think Dan perfectly described why you should kind of think about a degree apprenticeship, definitely. I think one of the biggest things he was talking about was earn while you learn. It's the same here at Ofwat. You get paid a very, very healthy amount, slightly more than what Dan was talking about. But obviously, as you mentioned, this does range. And obviously, same again, they do cover your university fees. So, on to Ofwat. One of the big things about Ofwat and why you should definitely consider a degree apprenticeship here is that they are extremely invested in your development as a person and also in your future. As Dan mentioned, they kind of want to build you up, and they're not looking for the brainiest brain of all time, someone who can walk in and solve all these kind of data and economics problems. They want a person who kind of can work well, mesh well with the company, work well with others, has a kind of interesting way of thinking about things, and that's what they're kind of looking for. Their development programs are sublime. Obviously, you've got university, they have an insane amount of training sessions from Excel, beginner, intermediate, advanced level, Power BI, kind of even transferable skills like emotional intelligence. Kind of the list can go on and on and on. And if the training sessions that you don't that you kind of want aren't provided, you've got LinkedIn Learning. There's too many opportunities, to be honest. There's too many opportunities to kind of develop and improve your skills. And the third point I kind of want to talk about why you should consider a degree apprenticeship at Ofwat is definitely the kind of work experience that you're going to be getting. At Ofwat, I'd say it's quite special in comparison to a lot of other degree apprenticeship programs. Um, you're going to have a lot of ownership over your own work. As you can see in my picture there, this will be posted tomorrow on LinkedIn, sadly. But you have a great level of ownership over your own work. You're not just going to be, oh, Abdullah, could you make me some coffee? Or Abdullah, could you go do this and this? No, you're genuinely going to be walked through an Excel task, kind of showing the bigger picture, and then you're going to have a go at it. You're going to have a try and kind of figure it out, and you're going to feel amazing afterwards. It's a sense of completion that I kind of haven't ever felt before, as obviously as working a job now, and you're going to have so much support from your line manager, and that's just the nature of Ofwat. To talk about kind of career progression, the career progression at Ofwat kind of works is you come in as a degree apprentice. Then I believe currently the way that things are working, this could change. So please don't take my word for it. But um, after I think a year or maybe 2 years, you become an associate. And then after that associate, you then become a senior associate. And at this stage, this is where you've completed your apprenticeship program. So just the associate is just kind of to give you a new name tag, basically, and kind of a little bit of a pay rise, I believe, to symbolize your improvement. And to kind of put it in perspective, so this is a 4-year course. This is economics course that we're talking about. It's a 4-year course. So after the 4 years, you'll become a senior associate. And to put it in kind of comparison to uni, not to disregard uni or anything of that matter, but let's say you do a 3-year uni course, then you'd have to apply for a graduate program, which is 2 years, and then 5 years. So you basically get a fast track, no student debt, 4 years, 4 to 5 years of work experience, which is indispensable in the workforce. And yeah, to kind of quickly go over the values and cultures at Ofwat. As I mentioned previously, Ofwat's not looking for the brainiest brain of all time, someone like that. They are actually looking for a person who accommodates a lot to the Sailor values. Ofwat's Sailor values are something that they actually hold very dear. You hear values for a company and like, sure, but it's very different at Ofwat. The values are embedded through the person. You are assessed actually when you apply to Ofwat how much you represent the Sailor values, and you can see it when you work. It's evident in the workplace. There's no hierarchical system. Obviously, there's a line manager system. There's no hierarchy. There's an open floor plan when you work. So your director, which is someone who's your boss's boss's boss, come sit with you, have a chat with you, help you out, show you around. There's no sense of, oh, you work for me. And that's great because it's civil service. Everyone wants to help each other. No one wants to there's no sense of competition between people. Um, I think for me personally, that what makes it really kind of stand out. You're not working on competing for clients. You're kind of working together to make everyone's life better. And I think that's something I can work for. That's something I can kind of feel good about working for, a company I can feel good working for. Okay, just to quickly move on. So, obviously, today I'm going to be talking about an economics degree apprenticeship, but obviously that's not the only apprenticeship that Ofwat does offer. They also do offer, well, at the moment, I'll go into that in a little bit more detail, but they also do offer a charting management apprenticeship. I think that's the one currently available. So yeah, but I'll talk about the economics degree apprenticeship from personal experience. So how the kind of structure is very similarly to how Dan kind of explained it. It's basically that. So 99.999% of the time, if you go into an economics degree apprenticeship, it will be with the University of Kent. And that's because of the GES program, which is the Government Economic Service program. So basically with the year, the way it works is it's a 4-year kind of 4-year program, but you're contracted to 5. And from as far as I know, that extra year there is not so you work as an extra year with the company. It's actually there as a buffer, just in case something goes wrong. God forbid something happens with uni, as in like you fail a year or something goes wrong, wherever it is, Ofwat puts in just an extra year as a buffer, just in case, so you can assess how everything's going and that kind of stuff, just so you're not panicking about losing your job, which is, again, shows what kind of company they are. So the kind of structure of it is you go down when the term begins in September for a week residential. That's kind of to get to know the people, to get to know the environment, have a little bit of a uni feel, because to be completely honest, that's one of the things that does get sacrificed with doing a degree apprenticeship. So they try in their own way to kind of make up for it, and they give you a 1 week residential, which is actually pretty fun. You get to meet a lot of people, and you get like 1 week of uni experience basically. And then once that week is over, you go to a designated once a week seminar. So every Friday, you don't have any work, you attend these seminars, you do your uni work, do your uni assignments, and then once every 8 weeks, you go to a face-to-face, whether that be in Leeds or in London. Me personally, I always like going down to London because who doesn't want to go down to London? Again, all expenses paid for when you go down to London, train, food, all that kind of thing, which is probably quite appealing. And then in terms of the modules, the one thing that I've very recently noticed is how well the modules actually align with what I'm working. Again, it's something pretty special about an economics degree apprenticeship. So currently I'm studying advanced statistics and principles of macroeconomics. And last semester I studied Excel, data analysis with Excel, and also principles of microeconomics. And these courses were genuinely invaluable to how much it helped me during my work, improve my Excel skills when it comes to stats. I'm able to do regression models, and I didn't do maths A level, so I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to be able to cope? But honestly, the people at your job will help you learn. It's a lot less scary than you think it is. Okay, just moving on, just because I'm a bit conscious of time, I don't want to run over anything. But yeah, so just some advice from degree apprentices. So there's 4 degree apprentices currently at Ofwat. So that's me, another economics degree apprentice, Tom, and the 2 project management apprentices, which are Olivia and Abby. So just some advice from them. So what we kind of enjoy the most, kind of top tips, if you do end up being a degree apprentice. For me, definitely it's don't be scared to ask questions. I think one piece of advice is when you no one tells you that when you join an apprenticeship, you kind of have this thought in the back of your head, like, I've completed it now, like I'm 18, good salary, no uni debts, all this kind of things. But kind of people not underestimate, but don't maybe know the reason why it's so good because it's so hard. It's quite difficult to balance, but also you need to remember to be able to ask for support because at work, you kind of need to learn to be able to say, look, I need help with this and that. And it also shows your ambition. So definitely that is, don't be scared of silly questions. It can be something as, how do I set up a Teams meeting? And someone will show you. No one's going to judge you. And that goes straight back to the values that are present at the company, at Ofwat, to be completely honest. I'll give you a chance to read kind of everyone else's if you're curious. Obviously, I think I'll check again with Ofwat if I'm allowed to kind of send you guys the. I'm 99% sure I can, but I will kind of relay that over. But yeah. And then this is kind of the juicy bit. This is what most people kind of want to know is how do you apply? What is the top tips for applying, specifically for Ofwat? As I mentioned before, and I mean this wholeheartedly, I'm not trying to trip anyone up when I say these sailor values are the do or die of whether you kind of get this apprenticeship or not. The applications are now open in celebration of National Apprentice Week. So yeah, so the recruitments are now open. So the way it works is basically exactly like Dan described. It's an initial written application. I think the first 2 questions are kind of to get a what type of person are you, and then the last 2 questions are kind of assessed. So they're marked. Don't quote me on which questions are assessed and which ones are not, but it is assessed. And then if you're successful, you will then go on to a solo online video interview. Once you complete that, so it's just you kind of speaking into a camera, and then that gets sent over to the recruitment team. They look at it, mark it, and then if you're successful again, you go to an assessment center day. So it's a very, very rigorous kind of application process. It's extremely difficult. And as Dan mentioned before, I think right at the start, economics degree apprenticeships are very far and few between. They are disgustingly competitive. But that doesn't mean people can't get them. I was competing with people who were going to stupidly posh private schools saying they got 4 A stars. They don't care. They don't care. You can have a trillion A stars, predicted A stars. They don't care. If you don't fit in with the kind of person that those Seder values, if you can't work well with the team, if you have this and this and this kind of values that don't mesh well with the workplace, then you kind of won't progress. It doesn't matter how smart you are. So definitely keep that in mind. Definitely on the assessment center day, there'll be a kind of group activity, and then obviously there'll be an assessment there, not a written one. I think it's just like more presentation style. Well, that was my one. And then if you're successful, if you're one of the lucky ones, it'll be the onboarding process, which is obviously the best bit. A little bit, probably a little bit more stressful because now you've got it. Now you've got to try to get the grades, which is. Sorry, I didn't even mention that, which is BBB or 120 UCAS points equivalent. Doesn't matter how you get the UCAS equivalents, ABC, A star BB, or no, A star DD or something. As long as you get the points, they are not fussed. Okay, just to finish off, this is my LinkedIn. I did check if I was allowed to share it. So please, if you do have any questions about Ofwat, kind of that you don't really want to ask on this webinar, if you don't feel comfortable, or if there's some more questions about just degree apprenticeships in general, please feel free to message me on LinkedIn. I am active on there. So yeah, thank you.
That's absolutely great, Abdullah. I think it's just so refreshing to hear it from yourself when you've literally just kind of getting through your first year, having gone through that process. Really great. Thank you so much, Abdullah. I think there might be some questions that we've got, and I'm going to fire away with a couple of things for Dan as well, if Dan doesn't mind coming back online, that we had in advance. And I don't know whether perhaps, Abdullah, you can answer this one first, to say what can a year 12 do? So this is obviously at the moment preparation rather than application, but what can a year 12 do at the moment to stand out and to prepare? What do you reckon is good advice? Bearing in mind you didn't really ever think that you were going for an apprenticeship, what really would you give them now as advice?
To be completely honest, I'd say if you're in year 12, just kind of stick to it, to kind of give you a perspective of how my because I didn't give a proper one of how I actually went down. Originally, I didn't even know what a degree apprenticeship was, to be completely honest. I wasn't. I hope I'm allowed to say this, but I wasn't exactly the model student at college. But it's okay because in my final
years, you're certainly allowed to say that. That's good. Show spirit.
But if you ask my teachers, Bree and Catherine, Vinny, Alice, they'll tell you that he was a good student, but there was a few times it wasn't exactly the best. So in year 12, I kind of wasn't very on the ball. I didn't do great in my mocks. In fact, I did pretty bad. And I kind of had a moment of self-reflection during summer. I was like, there's kind of no one else to point the finger at but myself. And that's when I started working a lot harder in year 13. Obviously, it was a slow process. But right at the end, I managed to do it. I ended up with getting pretty good grades. I got A star, A, B. And definitely, I'd say if you're in year 12, the biggest piece of advice I would tell you right now is just keep your head straight and just do what they ask almost. Don't put yourself in the position where I was, where it was just kind of like everything last minute, because those final periods were extremely stressful. I'd say keep going at it. I'd say oh, now I remembered. Also, definitely look at certain extracurricular activities. That's gonna help you stand out a bit. Especially now you're in year 12, you've probably got a little bit more free time. Those kind of things that take a little bit of time out your day, but if they give you even the smallest edge, I'd take them because that's what they're kind of looking for, definitely.
I think that's great advice, Abdullah, and I think it's something that Faye and I and the rest of the careers team are really keen to pack out, that kind of those extracurricular activities, work experience as well, that give you not just that academic edge, which, as you say, isn't always the most important. It is that potential, it's those characteristics, the qualities and the skills that, you know, are really quite subtle sometimes, but actually it's that it allows you to stand out as being keen and rounded and potential for an employer. And can I come to you, Dan, and just say from the point of view of more sort of theoretical, what do you think employers are looking for that year 12s particularly can build on at this stage?
So kind of is what you've just surmised to, anything that does help you stand out, those extracurriculars, your work placements. If you can get a work placement or a volunteering placement or some work experience with an employer that could take you on, not only do you stand out because they know who you are, they know what your personality is like, you also figure out what that environment's like. So you could be applying for a job thinking, yeah, I think it's for me. You have a taste today, 100%, that's not the route I'm going, or 100%, yes, this is a career pathway that I want to go. So you kind of iron that out in your head, but you also stand out for that employer as well. So yeah, that's the big one that I would say. Try and get any work experience that you can, even if it's great. It is superb if you can do it in the sector you're looking for. If you can't and you're employed, if you're working at the chippy, if you're working in a local supermarket, wherever it is, you've got those transferable skills and you've got another reference. So you're working with people, you're handling money, you're trusted, you're turning up on time, you're communicating with customers, you're communicating with staff. It's all skill sets that other employers are looking for.
That's great. And I think one of the things that Abdullah alluded to was about, you know, Ofwat in particular, as you've spoken about, is really at the forefront of developing some of these new ones, like the economics, but they are few and far between. And I think sometimes students are not aware of how many multiple applications they need to put in to perhaps get a success. It may not always be the case, but I think it is being able to accept sometimes rejection and gaining some feedback, if you can, from being rejected, and, you know, actually applying for as many as you can, some of those as well that you may not have even thought of. I can't imagine, Abdullah, that you actually originally had thought, even if you thought of an apprenticeship, would have thought about Ofwat. So actually exploring the marketplace is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I'd second that. I think originally I was planning to go to uni. Like I said, originally my predicted grades weren't great in year 12, which is my own fault, which is my own fault. But I managed to do it in year 13, just at the end, just to get them pushed up a little bit. I think I was working at a BBC level, and then I got pushed to AAB because, and then applied to Uni of Manchester, and that got rejected. And I was pretty heartbroken because I was like, oh, it's only one grade. Like sometimes they let you. Then I was like, oh, I'll see around, I'll look around, and I was like, I don't even know if I'm gonna get AAB, to be honest with you. So I kind of looked around kind of options, and by the look of it, I found Ofwat, and I found it was economics. It's what I wanted to do. It was BBB. I was like, you know, I can get BBB. I can get BBB. That's attainable. Um, so yeah, definitely have a look. If kind of one route wasn't what it was what you wanted, but didn't turn out right, there is another door open that was probably meant for you. So don't kind of get disheartened if you get rejected from, let's say, a Big Four company, or your dream job, or your dream apprenticeship, or your dream uni. There is genuinely something else out there. Even if you take a gap year, there's so many people I'm the youngest one in my apprenticeship program. All of them are 19, 20, and 21. They took gap years out. They took time to learn. They took time to kind of work, and they applied. It's there's no linear path, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely, that's really good advice. And for students and parents online, Faye's been putting lots and lots of links, and we will send around this recording afterwards, plus the presentations, but lots of links there for parents, for students. And I think, as Dan said, you know, setting up an account on the gov.uk website when you're ready to search. If you're in year 12, it's probably a bit sort of burdensome to keep getting emails. But you know, have a look, just see what's out there, click on things to have a look at the process, the kind of skills required, the kind of frameworks that are there, and the levels to start understanding that. There's plenty of information on our website as well. Also, UCAS, although UCAS is traditionally thought of as a place to apply only for university, they also now have a lot of information, and also a search and notification process for apprenticeships. As Dan said, the websites for various companies, and also LinkedIn and Indeed and various other websites are really, really useful. And it is really important to keep on looking at these, set up those accounts so that you get notifications of any new vacancies that come up. As Faye's put in the chat there, on Friday of this week, we have an apprenticeship employer workshop with Higgs LLP, the law firm in the West Midlands, and there's an opportunity to book a place on that. It's taking place in college. And one of the things that we find is that many students now are looking at university and potentially at apprenticeships. So in year 12, it's really good to make yourself familiar with the kind of things that Dan talked about, all of the setup for really beginning the search. And then I think Abdullah's information is priceless, to really think about those personal qualities, characteristics that companies are looking for, and that work experience, which we want, you know, all students to participate in. We have Futures Week, June the 16th, where you're off timetable, where you have an opportunity to have arranged a placement. So we really would encourage all students to be really active in gaining those extra things outside of their academic studies. We had a couple of questions, one which was quite specific about apprenticeships in radiology and a state agency. And actually, Dan, I'm not familiar with radiology. I know the NHS have webinars this week going on, which will help perhaps a student with such an inquiry. If they look on the NHS website, there's apprenticeships. There are, I think there is a link somewhere to one of those that's been recorded, if not one for this week. Do you know of anything in the NHS this week?
I don't rightly know what they're putting on this week. I have seen radiographer job roles advertised before on the Gov website.
Yeah.
So they do exist. I'm not entirely sure if it's a fully qualified or if it's sort of up to a certain standard. I am going to drop a link into the chat as well.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
For the iFate website, so it's if you click on the apprenticeship search, I've totally lost where I'm putting this. That's the right chat. And it will give you any standard that's been approved. So an employer and an education provider have got together, they've drawn up a platform, those standards are out there, it's been approved by the government, then it's on that website.
Thank you,
so
that's
I've
really
just dropped
helpful.
that into the chat as well.
That's lovely. And as I say, the NHS is very keen with its apprenticeships to continue that model, I think, in a number of different areas. What we would make you aware of to everybody on here is that sometimes apprenticeships are offered to people who already are employed in one particular role and are upskilling or changing direction. And so sometimes those apprenticeships are not easily sort of taken by school and college leavers, and it's just really important to understand that apprenticeships, my colleague Faye did an apprenticeship within the careers team, and actually, you know, that was a completely sort of a change of direction and an upskilling and a qualification that was given to obviously an existing employee, not a brand new one. So it's fair to say that you have to be aware that there is a lot of competition for these amongst existing workforce as well. And certainly I have seen estate agent apprenticeships. I would suggest that those are normally level 3 or above. But actually now there's real estate and estate agency and a lot of things within the construction industry which are coming up, particularly with the real estate as well. So
if you're looking for those jobs on like the finding an apprenticeship or wherever you're looking, use estate as your buzzword, because it's either real estate, estate agent or estate broker. So estate should cover what you're looking for.
That's really helpful, and I always suggest that students keep the categories as broad as possible until they're really sure of what they want to go for, because actually unless you start really reading those in the fine print, you might miss something that's you know, if you refine your search too much in the beginning. So Abdullah, I don't know if you can just answer this final sort of query about what happens after an apprenticeship ends from your perspective. You talked about that 5th year, and Dan might have something as well to add to that. But what do you believe happens at the end of your apprenticeship?
Well, to be fair, it kind of depends on the company, the level of apprenticeship that you're doing. But if we're taking it like as a degree apprenticeship, as I'm a degree apprentice, you would kind of end up with four years of work experience if all goes to plan. And then from that point onwards, you can either choose to move up to senior associate with that company, obviously a promotion, or you have 4 years of economic regulation knowledge to apply somewhere else, perhaps someone that has a better salary or is more suited to your dream job. It's kind of up to you, really. What happens when that apprenticeship is over? If you mean more of a kind of level 4 to 7, I think probably Dan would be better to answer that than me. But
that's great, thank you.
Yeah, that was sort of fabulous. So your options within the company tend to be there. Your employer, while you're on an apprenticeship, they are competitive. They do make you do lots of different assessments. You go through that process. So they're looking for you to work there full time. Providing you pass, at the moment, it's slightly above a 90% retention rate. So 9 times out of 10, you pass your apprenticeship. You've been set kind of the grades that you need to achieve for that full-time role. 9 times out of 10, you stay on to work for that company, either as the next step. So if you've done a level 3, rolling onto a degree level is not uncommon, or in full-time employment with that company.
That's really helpful, and I certainly think it's wise to understand that when a company is invested in you, in the main they want you to stay, but it isn't an absolute guarantee in all cases, and especially in those lower apprenticeships, I think. The other thing is it is a bit of a pyramid sort of thing where the base of the pyramid is being, say, level 3. There are many more of those, and as you reach the pinnacle at the top of the pyramid, there are fewer of the degree apprenticeships. So actually it is really good, and I think good advice from both of our guest speakers this evening to say to look at all ranges of those, the level 3 and above, because actually in accountancy, for instance, in particular, very often companies want you to start at level 3 because you're gaining new qualifications that are industry standard, and build upon those. So it really is wise to look at the level 3 and above, and there is absolutely nothing wrong in getting a level 3 apprenticeship when you're already doing a level 3 qualification, because as you said at the beginning, Dan, testing those waters out, but also that very often is a sort of an industry standard to get those professional qualifications and work up, as opposed to starting at the degree apprenticeship in some places. So unless there's any further questions coming in, that's absolutely wonderful this evening to kick off National Apprenticeship Week. We're really delighted that with our guest speakers, Dan and Abdullah, thank you very much for sharing that time. If anybody has any questions afterwards, Faye has just put there, you can always email careers@keds.ac.uk, and that includes parents. And we would encourage students to take up the work experience opportunities that we put in front of you, to sign up to one of the 6 pathways that we advertise, where students who may know what kind of professional area they might want to go into. We offer 6 pathways where we have opportunities, which we advertise on an MS Teams. And we have plenty of information on our website and YouTube, and also the Padlet that we use as our virtual notice board. And all of those things can be found both in the chat that we've put here, but also on the website. Thank you very much indeed to my colleague Faye, and to everybody for coming on this evening, and to Dan and Abdullah. We wish you all a really good evening, and we wish you, Abdullah, best of luck with the rest of your apprenticeship. We know that we'll be seeing you again, and having the benefit with our students to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.